right, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. I know I always say that the November Principal's Coffee is always the toughest one to get to because of where it lies, and we have Thanksgiving coming up, so I know everybody has a lot of preparations underway. There's people coming back to the house, there's things to do, and I appreciate you being here. So Dr. Kaltenecker is here. He's going to give a Title I presentation, but I did want to just give a few announcements before I turned it over to him. I know the conversation that we had in last Principal's Coffee around the weighting, around ranking AI, those were really good conversations, and Christina Wilson and I have been in the process of going out directly to the colleges and asking them very specific questions. So are they using AI in any way in their application process? We're asking colleges if weighting has any impact on acceptances. We're asking if they believe that ranking has any impact on acceptances. We're looking at our actual transcript and the layout of it and the information that's on there, and we're trying to get a sense of what they believe is important and whether our transcript mirrors that. So really good conversations. I think what we're looking at as well is we have to balance where we are as a community, and with the understanding that the Byram Hills community, we are probably, when we look at other areas of the country, like our students are much more prepared for colleges. Now, when we are looking at this, we want to make sure that any changes, if we would make them, that we're not just making it because of the kid who is going to be a cum laude student, or the kid who is, hasn't taken any classes that would be considered APs. We want to make sure that any of the changes that we make are good for all of our kids and not for a specific subgroup at the detriment to another subgroup. So really good conversations, and I appreciate the community being willing to have these conversations, because I know a lot of times there's a lot of emotions attached to it. So we are always looking to, number one, improve the overall student experience here at Byram Hills High School. So in any one of these decisions that we make, we have to keep that in mind. And we were talking earlier about challenge success, and we can't stray too far from the ideals of what challenge success sort of encourages us to do. And that's to look at academic engagement, student workload, sleep, teacher care, parent expectations, academic integrity, and extracurricular activities. And so if we're going to make changes, we have to make sure that we connect them to all of those different areas to see if it has a positive or negative impact on that student experience. So again, thank you for being engaged in that conversation and being willing to have it. And ultimately, it's going to make us a better community, because we will know. And asking the question and going out and finding the answers, even if it may not be the ones that we like, that's important to do because it does keep pushing us forward. Congratulations to our girls tennis team. 3 out of 4 years that they are the state champs, which is amazing. And again, just so excited for them. They work so hard and really are just such a great team. It's so fun to watch them when they were coming back off of the bus and we were welcoming here. I really wanted to thank the members of the Armonk Fire Department and the North Castle Police. They had a really nice procession as they came off back onto campus, and it was really exciting for them, something they'll remember their whole lives. We are going to celebrate officially this Sunday with a parade in town. It's going to kick off at 9 a.m. starting at HCC, and then it's going to wind through town. I have a slide up, and I'll show you later where the path will actually be. But congratulations again to them. And Jenna Kleineman was able to do a signing letter of intent last week as well. So congratulations to her as part of that team and for signing her letter of intent. We have the Varley Players this weekend, Friday and Saturday, with An Ideal Husband, and tickets are still available. And shows are at 7 o'clock on Friday and Saturday, and there's also a matinee at 2 p.m. on Saturday. So our lecture hall, we all got a chance to see it, but we now have students in there. They are taking classes. We have Startup and our Global Scholars in there, and they have reported that they are so happy to have that space. It really does lend itself to collaboration, especially in Startup and Global Scholars, where they're really working in teams. The space has really been transformed. So where we went to college, where it was the sage on a stage speaking up to everybody, now it's really puts them all on the same level and they're collaborating. So it really is just a brief shot of how schooling and education has changed over the course of the last, since 1966 here at Byram Hills. And they're still moving ahead with all the renovations on the library. Every day they're in there, they're working hard, and that's coming together. And we're hoping, I'm going to say between February and April, somewhere in there, that we'll be able to get back in there. I know. We did have the senior internship parent meeting last Thursday night. If you wanted to go, but you weren't able to make it for any reason, please don't hesitate to reach out directly to Jen Spirelli. Her and Jenny Croak are advising the program. They're managing the program. So if you had any questions and you weren't able to make it, by all means reach out to her and she would be able to share with you all of that info. And it's never too early to start looking for a senior internship. If you have a senior, you can encourage them to start looking now. Also, this will be my pitch to the community. If you feel like you have an opportunity for one of our students to 30 hours a week for the last 6 weeks of the school year, that you would be able to host as an internship site, please reach out to me as well. And we have so many great community members who have offered to host our students, and we have really great relationships with them. And anything that we can do to help support that growth as we get towards the achieving our mission. The last really assessment that they have is the internship. So really appreciate the community for supporting our internship program. All right, so Dr. Kaltenecker is going to be here speaking about his Title I. If you haven't already done so, I have a sheet that I think everybody has it. But again, every year he comes and addresses this with us, and I think he takes Title I, which if you hear about it, you're like, and he turns it into something that was actually really exciting. So, Tim, I'll get you going.
Right, so part of the presentation is required, and that's just a few slides, and I'll talk about that. But I use this as an opportunity to talk about our initiatives district-wide. If you have, I know some of you have been to some other presentations, so you might have heard this before, but I'll focus a little more on the high school programs. So the first piece of it.
Do you want the mic, Tim?
I think I'm okay if you can hear me all right. That's fine. These are some pictures of our students across the grade levels, which is nice to just highlight some of the engagement. On the left, there are students presenting science research topics to their classmates. We have students in our elementary school performing experiments. I believe that was a third grade classroom last year. We're piloting a new science curriculum in our elementary school. We're in our second year of that pilot. And what is exciting about that pilot, about the science curriculum and the program, is that it gets students to act like scientists by conducting experiments. When we were first looking at this, we were questioning whether or not students at young grades can create hypotheses, which it actually asks them to do. But when I walked into a first grade classroom and students tell me they're creating hypotheses and they can use that word, and that aligns with our literacy goals, and I'll talk about that in a moment, it was really exciting to see. And these students are doing an experiment. We had our solar eclipse last year, which was a great community event. And our Reading Buddies picture on the right, it's a second grade classroom and a kindergarten classroom. The teachers partner together, and the second grade students help the kindergarten teachers with reading. And so the second graders have to learn about how to teach reading. So it's an opportunity to work on the phonics and the pronunciation of the letters. And when they go meet with the kindergarten teachers, they're doing it in a proper way. So it's a very exciting opportunity. And they make it also that partnership between the older students and the younger students. So I'd like to highlight some pictures to show you a little bit of a snapshot of what's happening in our classrooms. Part of the required presentation is to talk about what Title I is. We get funding from the federal government as part of the Every Student Succeeds Act based on economic need. So we don't get a lot in Byram Hills, but we do get some money. So every year I complete the very lengthy application. It takes me about 3 days in the summer to complete it, but it's worth getting as much funds as I can to use to support our students. So, so we use the funds in a variety of ways where it's sort of mandated how we can use the funds, but we use it to support students who may be at risk of falling behind meeting state standards. So we would do things like using funding to help support students in after-school programs. So we do academic intervention services both during the school year and in the summer as well. We support professional learning for teachers. We make sure we have research-based curriculum. So all of the funds can be applied in those ways. So that just gives you sort of a broad level overview of what Title I funds is. I also have to present to you if you have a complaint about how we're using Title I. This is the information, but I would ask you just to call me first and we can have a conversation. We have never gotten a complaint filed with the state yet. And also, I'm required to tell you how you can be involved in our schools. You're at a principal's coffee, and I know many of you, so I know you're involved in our schools a lot, but there are some things maybe you're not as familiar with. We have site-based team. We meet twice a year as a district. You might be involved in building level site-based team as well. Every building has one. It works on building initiatives, and we come together as a district to work on our initiatives district-wide. The last 3 years, we've been studying character education, and we rewrote our character education principles over those 3 years and launched them last spring. So now we're working on how those principles live in our schools. That information is on our website, and we're very excited about the revised version of our character education principles. We also have the Byram Hills Education Foundation, which many of you know about, and some of you have been members of that and on the executive board. And thank you for doing the fundraising and allowing us to write grants that really keep Byram Hills on the cutting edge of innovation. We have our PTSA as ways to get involved. We have Maria here today, who's one of our co-presidents. So you can always talk to Maria or get involved in our PTSA. They're always looking for great volunteers. Usually once someone's in the PTSA, they're usually there a long time because you guys stick around, which is great. So thank you for your work. And speaking of opportunities, I'll mention just two more, which is Global Scholars and Startup. They're recently new programs. Global Scholars is in its 8th year, I believe, and Startup in its 3rd year. Both of which received seed money from the Byram Hills Education Foundation to get started. So we're appreciative of that. It shows the innovation from the foundation. And it's ways parents can be involved. We're often looking for volunteers in both of those programs, particularly in Startup, which has parents coming in to be expert presenters to our students on any knowledge they have about the business world, starting a company or aspects of running a company, and also parents who are mentors to teams. So in Startup, you form a team and you're trying to launch a business idea, and every team is working with a parent mentor. And it's an incredible opportunity, and we have mentors who continue to do it year after year. Some have done it now for 3 years, and a really incredible experience. So if any of you want to be involved in that way, we have a form to fill out. You can just reach out to me and I'll send that to you. So it's a great opportunity. And you can be involved based on your level of time commitment. A mentor obviously takes more time when you're meeting with kids regularly, but you can also come into the class for a one-time shot to teach about an aspect of your expertise, which is great. And also be on a judging panel where you can evaluate students' pitches, and that's a less time commitment as well. So if you have an interest, let me know. We love getting more parents, and it's a great opportunity for our kids to interact with our parent community. So to get into some of our initiatives, I want to show the curriculum review cycle. This is a question I get asked frequently about when are we going to review a particular program or curriculum. Our Board of Education is familiar with this. I present it every year. We have a board member present today, Lara Stengel. Thanks for being here. So we have 4 phases we go through in a curriculum review. Whenever we're looking at a new program or reevaluating an existing program. For example, I mentioned we're looking at an elementary science curriculum. So we spent over a year in the study and plan phase where we're doing the research on what is research-based curricula in elementary science. What are the standards? Is there alignment? So you're starting to unpack what you want to know about the program. And then in phase 2, you would implement it once you made choices. When we were in phase 1 for our science program, we looked at 13 different elementary science programs, and we did a couple site visits to neighboring districts using some of those programs so we could see it in action and talk to their principals and talk to the teachers about it before making a decision of what to pilot. And then we implement any changes to existing curriculum or new curricula, and then we evaluate and reflect upon it, and then we revise and refine based on the results that we get. And that cycle continues over and over. And we may iterate within a cycle in a phase or two, depending on where we are in that study. So for example, with the science program at the elementary level, we are continuing our pilot in the second year. So we evaluated reflective, and we went back to phase 2 to implement a second year based on what we learned in the first year of the pilot. We made some decisions like bringing in some other experts to help us with some things we were struggling with, and we brought in more teachers to participate in that pilot as well. So constantly thinking deeply about the work before making a final decision. Any curriculum that we decide to adopt is a recommendation to the Board of Education. It's actually the Board of Education that approves the adoption of a curriculum based on our recommendation in our study. So I will present information to the board and recommend whether we should adopt something. And that's how the process works, just so it's not so mysterious, and I do get asked that question occasionally. So currently, here's some places we are in various cycles of either new or existing programs or curriculum. I'll spend just a moment on K-5. I'll go to 6-12 in a moment. One thing I want to point out here is we're in a third year of having a very extensive and deep literacy study of our K-5 reading and writing program. It started 3 years ago with a literacy study that involved parents, students, and or parents, teachers, and administrators. All the information's on our website under the curriculum link, so if you're curious about that, you can look that up. And we've trained all of our special education teachers in a knowledge base called Morton Gillingham, which is research-based practices. And we've put in a lot of work into that, and we're continuing that literacy work. In fact, we have an expert researcher from NYU with us today over at Coleman Hill working with the kindergarten, first and second grade teachers this week. So there's a lot happening at the elementary level, including the pilot of No Adam, which is the science curriculum we're reviewing right now. At the secondary level, looking at the right side, you see we still have Startup and Global Scholars. That is something, since they're relatively new programs, constantly reflecting upon that work and making some revisions to the curriculum in the program. Working on science, so Chris Walsh talked earlier about our review of the science program. So the new science standards are phasing in right now. Last year we had new assessments in grade 5 and 8. This year we have new science assessments in earth science and living environment. Next year we'll have it in chemistry. Also the standards have been evolving. So we've been studying those standards, so we've been in study mode for a while. Now we're implementing new curriculum, new instructional practices, and we'll probably stay in that phase 2 and 3 for a few years in science as we see the results, as we get that data. So those are some of the things that are happening at the high school in terms of where we are in our review cycle. A few things to point out is every year on a cycle I have our department chairs or other department leaders come talk to the Board of Education to go a little bit deeper into the work that they're doing. So for example, we just had Melissa Stahl present last month to the board on the state of the World Languages Department. All these reports can be viewed on our district website. You can watch the presentations at the board meetings. Coming up in February will be a science where we will summarize the work of the Tri-State Consortium's feedback to us and what our next steps are to address that feedback. So that will happen in February. And then also every year in September and October, I present assessment reports. I look at our state testing data and other data and present that to the board on a regular basis. basis. And all of the reports going back, I think as early as 2013, are on our district website using the QR code or a link, so you can see that information. And something we like to also talk about is the impact and the value added of a Byram Hills education based on our programs, is that starting from 2001 to 2024, looking at the percent of students that go to the top colleges. So we look at the Barron's report of Tier 1 and Tier 2. And last year's graduating class had 89% of students attending the top 11% of colleges in the country, which to me is an indicator of the value added of our education, that we're getting most of our students and almost all of our students, the majority of them, into the top colleges in the country, which is a really extraordinary result. And finally, I'll show a benchmark assessment we gave 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And this was just a way for us to say, we have other data that indicates we're doing really well, but we wondered, and Chris and I would talk, how do we do compared outside of New York State? And how do we compare to other schools in the United States and internationally? And this organization called OECD, it offer a subset of the PISA test. The PISA is a sort of a famous test where results come out where it compares students internationally of how different countries are performing. And we thought we could use it as a benchmark. So we administered this test, and there was an age range. I think it was 15 and 16-year-olds.
15 and a half.
15 and a half. So it was 15 to 16, 15 and a half exactly. We had a range of birth dates that we could select students from. Students took the assessment. Byram Hills is represented by that green hexagon, and that shows how we compare to either the circle with the United States, the American flag, or the blue symbol, which is the international schools. These aren't all schools. These are obviously schools that chose to participate in this test at that particular time. And we range it at well above in all of the three categories, which was reading, math, and science, above other schools in the U.S. and internationally. And when we received the summary of the report, we were on a phone call, and they were really impressed with particularly where we stood outside of some real significant other countries, including Singapore, that we outperformed Singapore in mathematics. And they said we rarely see that with U.S. schools. So that was something that made us feel strong about the work we've been doing K-12 in the math program particularly. They also look at social emotional factors, and just to point out a few things, 85% of our students observe, or 85% report that they get help from their teachers, which is a very strong sign that we do pride ourselves on having our teachers be accessible to provide student support. They also talked about a couple other things. They looked at discipline, and they rate discipline based on student input as being self-control, which is good, that it's not being controlled by the teacher in the classroom, but that students work hard on self-control in the classroom. Students perceive their overall health as optimistic, and overall life satisfaction is optimistic. So that was at the end of the assessment. It gives an assessment of their social emotional learning. So those were a few things that helped us see was the work of Challenge Success doing what we wanted to, as our academic programs, is there anything that we should be aware of. So that was just a little benchmarking. Maybe we'll revisit that in a few more years and do it again to see if there's any change. But it wasn't like there's any areas we need to address that dramatically, so we feel pretty confident in the direction. And that's it. And that was one of our kindergarten's first day. Our kindergarten teachers have students draw themselves on the first day of school, and I love taking these pictures. So that was just a bunch of information on just a couple highlights. There's a lot I could talk about forever, but I'll just have an opportunity if there's any questions. I could go a little deeper if you want to, or anything I didn't talk about.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if you'll be able to answer this now,
Sure.
but what I was actually hoping is to include it in a future coffee sometime soon. But there is, when you're talking about curriculum and reevaluating curriculums, the whole regents and what's going on with the regents and whether or not they are going to actually count or not count, whether you pass or not pass, and how that might.
Sure.
The articles that I read are super vague on what actually will be required in New York State moving forward with our students, and it would be great to get some clarification from our school specifically, because it is a weight on the students of, okay, we have to study for this now, and this is a big year, and are we teaching to the tests, are we not? And some of them are good tests to teach to, which is okay. But,
Yeah, so what you're...
It's been a punch in the gut when we, all of a
Right.
sudden we've been taking Regents and...
Not this year.
Yes.
Not
So
this year, but-
what you're referring to, for those who haven't been following as much, I know you read the headlines in the press that say New York's getting rid of Regents, and
Yeah.
that's not accurate.
Right.
So I'll clarify that, and certainly if, Chris, if we want to do...
January, we have Portrait of a Graduate and Deb coming in for
Okay,
science.
so we'll do more, we can go and unpack that a little bit, but it was just last Monday, that the Board of Regents released the timeline and a little more details
Okay.
about the shift in graduation measures in New York State. So it was about 3 or 4 years ago, New York State commissioned what they call the Blue Ribbon Commission to study graduation requirements. And they made some recommendations last year and then the state put out a timeline, which they just released last week. So we're all trying to make sense of it. There were a few surprises in it that I didn't hear about previously. And looking at what the timeline is. So I'm convening a study group internally with Chris, Ms. Wilson, our guidance counselor, and a few other key people to start unpacking what the state released and thinking about what's the impact, and we'll probably get some subcommittees together, which will involve parents, it'll involve students, it'll involve teachers and administrators. And we need a little more information, but we do have a general sense. So what you're referring to is not that they're eliminating Regents, but they're uncoupling the Regents requirement for graduation, meaning students can take the Regents as a graduation requirement, but don't have to. But they will have to do other things in place of that and demonstrate their learning in other ways through things such as a capstone project or other locally developed assessments, and we'll have to define what that looks like. So New York is moving toward one diploma, so every student in New York State will receive the same diploma. Right now, we have different types of diplomas, like advanced Regents and things like that, that could be offered throughout the state. They're moving to one diploma with seals that students can get. For example, we have the seal of civic readiness, which we do implement, and many of our students will get the seal of civic readiness. That'll be a way that students in New York State can show areas of particular focus. So I believe the state's going to create more seals. Right now they have 2 seals and some other type of designations. They have a seal of biliteracy as well, which we do offer. So those are 2 ways. So the uncoupling of Regents is going to happen with the 2027 cohort. Cohorts are defined by students who enter 9th grade. So that would be our current 6th grade students, I believe. Let's see, 6 will be coming in they came in 24, 25, 26, 27. Current 6th graders will no longer be required to take Regents exams.
For graduation.
For graduation. But they could take them. We still will offer them and take them for graduation. So that's sort of the nuance that the media leaves out in the articles.
And ESSA still requires those state exams to be taken to have access to those funds.
Yeah, so if you're asking why does New York even give the Regents then, it's because the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is federal legislation, requires all schools in the country to give exams at various levels. For example, you have to give literacy, math, and science at the elementary level, middle school, and high school. And that's required by federal legislation. So we'll still have to have our students take Regents, but it doesn't have to be a requirement. Meaning you could take it and fail, but still graduate.
Right.
And we still, here's where we're grappling, is we still need students to take them for the federal requirement,
Right.
but students don't have to take them to graduate. So how are we going to balance that in our
Right.
classrooms? We don't know yet. We're going to have to
Yeah, it doesn't-
unpack that and figure that out.
Exactly. Look, it could be in situations where there's different pathways that students can demonstrate their readiness, and one of those ways may be through taking the exam. It's possible that we will have students opting out of Regents exams, the way that students opt out of 3 through 8 now. Right now, it's a graduation requirement, so you can't opt out of a Regents exam. I think the other side of it, though, is that there are going to be different opportunities for students to demonstrate their readiness. The other change on this as well is New York State is saying that there will be one transcript one New York State transcript. So for us, we know that our transcript now goes far beyond what New York State offers. However, all public schools in New York State are going to have this transcript that New York State does.
There will be a transcript we have to use. I
Yes.
just confirmed that yesterday from feedback from the state, so there'll be one transcript. And we have to confer diplomas if a student meets New York State requirements. Currently, different communities can have different local requirements. Like some school districts have a community service requirement. We require an internship. We require first aid to graduate. A student can't graduate Byram Hills without taking first aid. We can no longer have those types of extra requirements. We can integrate them into coursework and do things like that, and we're going to start getting creative, I think. But if a student meets New York State's requirements, the principal has to confer the diploma.
So do you have a standard New York State transcript now?
Not yet, no,
Not
We
yet.
don't yet.
no.
Will that play into whether or not you weight grades or not? Like, how will that?
No, I don't think that has any impact on it as I think about it right now. I think the weighting issue is more about like community values
Right.
and really wondering whether it aligns with that ideal that is in our mission, right? And I think being, that weighting issue is so specific to just a certain portion of our students that I don't see that
doesn't
clouding
play out
this portrait of a graduate. If anything, I think it takes away the portrait of a graduate with so many different areas that you can demonstrate your readiness. I think that even makes the weighting issue even that much less.
Yeah.
So Lara had a question.
Yeah, well, sir, no, I just wanted to add that I think it's important to realize this is an evolving, process, and I wanted to say thank you to both of you because I know you sat in on a lot of meetings about it, and the guidance advisory committee, which is comprised of parents, teachers, board members, students, and guidance, have already met regarding how this is going to impact the student body and asking for, input on how, what they think would be, beneficial. So we're looking at it from that lens, and this is, we have to just figure out what's going on. So
Yeah, I've attended 3 regional meetings already. Chris and I went to a feedback session to give our thoughts on it to the state because there is a feedback portion of new regulations for 60 days. So we're in that process right now. What Chris has mentioned, the portrait of a graduate, that's how New York State's going to redefine credits. So we're moving away from what's called the Carnegie credit system, which is students getting a credit for taking particular courses and having 3 credits in math and 4 credits in English and social studies. It's going to be credits geared around this portrait of a graduate. Right now, New York State has 7 slices in that portrait. One of the slices is content mastery. Other slices include problem solving, critical thinking, global awareness. I don't have them all memorized yet. So, but there's 7 right now. I haven't memorized them because I'm not sure might change. Do you have it up there, Chris?
Yeah.
And then credits will be given that way if students meet the requirements within that particular domain. So that's going to be a big shift for us. We're going to get more details on that next year from the state in terms of the credit piece of the portrait of a graduate. The full shift right now, the timeline is for the cohort of 2029, which would be our current 4th grade students. And again, cohort is defined by when a student enters 9th grade. So the 2029 cohort, for example, this year's 9th grade class is the 2024 cohort. So it's current 4th graders will have the full new graduation requirements. And then between 6th and 4th grade, it's going to be a blend. So we'll have a couple of years where somehow we're balancing 2 systems. So these are all things we don't know the details yet. Literally, this was released a week ago. So we're making sense of it, have a committee meeting in a couple weeks to start asking questions and thinking about what type of subcommittee should we form and what type of work should we be doing.
Bill Donahue, former superintendent, used to say, we hate taking tests at Byram Hills, but we love getting the results. And I think about that in terms of whether the Regents exams actually count. I think in many ways it keeps us honest and it keeps us aligned to a shared understanding of what our kids should be walking out of here with. I know we'll do a good job of really making sure that we are aligned with what those needs are. But again, like those Regents exams, not that it was easy, but we knew what we needed to be preparing our students for. So this is just what the state has proposed, and all of those different slices of the pie will be ways that students can demonstrate their readiness. And so we know right now that orange slice, that's the majority of the work that we're doing in the classrooms every day. Now, we're ahead of the game because when you look at global citizenship and you look at cultural competence and you look at innovative problem solver, just two of the programs that Tim mentioned, Global Scholars and Startup, they could be really big chunks of those slices right now. If we jumped in and started to unpack what all of the other teachers are doing in their courses, from our required to our electives, we're going to be able to start chipping away at those slices of the pie.
So each of those, I'm not sure if those slices are equal weighted, when we see the credit distribution, that's going to be interesting. The visual looks like, effective communicator is equally weighted to literate across all content areas. Is that true? I don't know in terms of how we distribute, credits in the new systems. That has not been in place. So these are the types of questions we're going to be asking ourselves. One thing I know Chris does really well in any major change, if you look at the master schedule shift that Chris did 4 years ago in his study 2 years previously, was wanting to make a big change in the master schedule. How do we preserve the things that work really well while looking for new opportunities of areas we can improve upon? So that is what we'll do with this. Like, what's working well, we don't want to lose our strong academic rigorous curriculum. We don't want to lose the social, emotional, and wellness that we've created through Challenge Success and other initiatives where our students are calm and they're happy and they're optimistic. We want to hang on to those things. But we'll start asking ourselves, are there any opportunities here that we could even enhance while maintaining those other pieces? So that's why we want to start early in this and really put together a good team to start thinking critically about how to make that shift. And we'll certainly involve parents in that as well, because your feedback will be important to us.
Yeah, and just like looking up here, these are just some examples they proposed about expanding learning experiences. So obviously the high school courses are still going to be a part of it. Like Tim said, right, it's up there out of those 8 boxes, it's equal size, but we don't know when this actually, is rolled out all the way, whether that takes up a much more, large area. The credentials and seals, we already have the seal of biliteracy and the civic readiness. And then we have students who are participating in some of our BOCES programs. But the more we learn about it, the more we'll be able to say, to Tim's point, well, we could really offer different opportunities for our students that we don't have right now. And these are just different angles that kids can demonstrate their readiness and sort of their interests.
Yeah, 3 things surprised me, all related to requirements in the new graduation requirements that I learned when it was released last week that I hadn't heard before, was requirements in career and technical education. Every student will have to get a credit in career and technical education, financial literacy, and climate education. Those were 3 things in the rollout last week. I went, oh, I hadn't heard that before. Because a lot of these things, we heard about the portrait last year. We heard about the shift of assessment, decoupling assessments. Didn't hear about those pieces. And also, they're going to, again, rewrite the standards and change the assessments. Now, we're just finishing a multi-year shift of new assessments. We're going to do that piece again, which I find interesting. So, it's just one of those things. You take a deep breath, and you're like, okay, we can approach this. This will be okay.
You said that this started like 3 to 4 years ago, the process of determining this change. Do we know what initiated the change in New York State? Or
Commissioner Rosa was interested in, you know, when she went out to the different communities and asked for feedback, I think the feedback was that students, if we really want students to be ready for this ever-changing world, we need to offer different ways for them to demonstrate their readiness. And so from that, I think she convened
the Blue Ribbon Commission.
There was Regents.
Yep. There were a lot of experts from all different fields who came together and studied the research on graduation and students, the needs for students in the workforce and college readiness. Came together, and this was sort of the product of that work.
So it was sort of like within the state initiated, not something like a response to a federal guideline, right?
No, this was all state initiated, not driven by the federal government. Chris and I think years ago, at an early launch of this, went to a feedback session on what we would want students to have. You know, the state did go around and engage stakeholders about 5 years ago. This work, it was right before the pandemic. They started launching that work. And then they picked it up after the pandemic. So we always take the approach of where are there opportunities and how do we preserve what works. So, you know, I don't want to get overwhelmed by this. It seems like a fast timeline for me. With all the pieces that are changing, it's a big change with, you know, just 8 years, but 6 years. But we'll do it.
And we'll do a much deeper dive in January. So whenever that is, I think it's a Tuesday in January. We'll do a principal's coffee. Tim, you're welcome to come back.
Sure.
We'll do a deep dive. So we'll look at that and science at that meeting. Yeah. So
28th of January.
January 28th.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
All right. So we do have our parent-teacher conferences coming up, and they fall, I guess, a little bit later this year because Thanksgiving is so late. But they're going to be on Thursday, December 5th. And again, as a reminder, we have an early dismissal for our students on that day at 11:10. So there'll be regular bus schedule leaving from the building at that time. Middle school does not have an early dismissal that day. So if you have, you know, siblings, the older sibling in high school will be home. And again, the first set of conferences are going to be in the school day, the end of it, 11:50 to 2:25. And then again, we'll come back 6 to 8 p.m. So yesterday I sent out an email blast that explained to parents the hows and whys and whens. So if you wanted to know when you could go on there, the window is going to open up Monday at 9 a.m. on December 2nd, and it's going to close on the 4th. So I know we have people that are going on now, I call them the Byram Hill Sooners. They are trying to get on there. It's going to ask you for a pass key now. It's not even opened up. So if you go on there and you see it needs a pass key, that's because we haven't opened it. At 9 a.m. on Monday, December 2nd, you'll be able to go on. If you have an extenuating circumstance for an illness or you're traveling and you can't get here, we would open it up to doing a remote meeting. We are preferring, obviously, everybody to be in the building doing a face-to-face meeting, but we know that for some parents it's impossible, but we want to give you that opportunity. So there's instructions on how to set that up as well in there. This is my pitch. I know that some people will get upset, but we really want the kids who are, you know, not getting the grades that are the greatest to be able to have their parents come in for the conferences. Certainly if your students have A+, maybe that's the reason why they're getting the A+, because you're in there and you're involved. But if you really don't feel like you're going to be getting much great feedback, please consider leaving that opportunity for somebody else to go in who may have a student who's struggling. So we appreciate everybody who comes in. I think that partnership is really important. I know having them at this point of the year, there's still a chance when students can change either whatever they're doing in class, or maybe there's just a direction that they need to just turn a little bit. So we do want to make them valuable, and if you think that going into a conference won't be valuable for you, then please consider leaving it open for somebody else. And they are 10 minutes, so we really try to jam-pack as much information as we can in there. All right, so the tennis parade, I mentioned it earlier, but once again, congratulations to the girls team. This Sunday at 9 a.m., it's going to be starting out at HCC. We'll go McDonald Avenue, right onto Bedford Road, right onto Maple, left onto Main Street, and then another left back onto Bedford Road, where we'll go right back to the town hall. And then after a little ceremony at the town hall, the team will go over and they'll hang up their sign to be added with the other 4 that are there. So we have the 2007 boys soccer team, 2015 boys baseball team, 2021 tennis team, 22 girls tennis team, and 24 girls tennis team. So very impressive. Any questions about that? I get to play the bass drum in the parade, so that always excites me. All right, so the winter dance, we are very excited. As you can hear, they're going to have a bake sale today, and any of the funds that we receive are going to go towards defraying the cost of the food trucks that we're going to have, as well as the DJ. And again, ultimately, we want to make this dance a fundraiser for all of the great activity boards and student government. What's really interesting about this is that we have the great activity board, student government, and parents from the PTSA really working together. And I do have to give a big shout out to Miss Kitty Lewis, Miss Albert, and then the members of our PTSA for being willing to be involved in it. So again, it is all grade levels. We were getting requests to have 9th and 10th graders in the lower gym. We said no, everybody's going to be in the upper gym. We're going to have a chill out space in the dance studio. So if it gets too tense for anybody, they can go and hang out in the dance studio. We'll have some relaxing, I don't know, whatever we put there, video games or something. Tickets are $40 in advance and $50 at the door. And that's really to encourage pre-sales. There will be a DJ, food truck, photographer, step and repeat. And we're going to have semi-formal attire. We're asking people holding off from doing the gowns and the tuxedos and letting the people going to the prom do those.
Chris, what are they raising money for? Is it to pay for the dance? Or?
So eventually to defray the cost of their prom and the senior events. Any questions about that? So in 2019, we tried to have a homecoming dance. We might have had 40 kids who showed up, and I think the feedback that we got there was that it wasn't enough organizations involved. So that's why having the student government, which is one of their first real big initiatives, along with the Great Activity Board, joining forces with the PTSA. We're hoping to get probably anywhere from 200 to 350. That's sort of our goal right now in that zone.
And how many have you sold already?
We have, I think, 40. Yeah. And we really haven't done the big blitz yet either.
Yeah, I think they just heard about the sales like yesterday.
Yeah.
I guess.
And then we're working with athletics. There's certain athletic events that we can't get around just because they're tournaments that were already scheduled. But for all the other, like there's a basketball tournament where they may have to play at 6, and we're hoping to still get them back. And then with hockey, we're looking to see if they can shift the ice time. So we're trying to do everything we can to open it up, and we want as many kids to be able to come as possible. Any questions about it? All right, so we don't have a principal's coffee in December. We do have an alumni panel, and we're excited if you have any college age alumni who would be interested in being on a panel, wink wink, please just reach out to me.
What's the date for the alumni?
The alumni panel, we have it on the 19th of December. So it's the Thursday before we go on break. And the feedback, and that was a Challenge Success inspired event, and the feedback from our juniors and seniors was that it was one of the most valuable things that they did in school last year in terms of lowering their temperature around college and getting a sense of the directions that you can go. Artworks Gallery is opening up. That's one of the great things that started last year. It's faculty, students, administrators contributing their art to a gallery that was proposed and started by Mr. Chuney, and that's going to be taking place in the Byram Bean. Again, we have Varley Players and Ideal Husband by Oscar Wilde. Break a leg to all of those students involved. Girls Tennis Parade, Junior Parent Meeting, 7 p.m. Now, that's important to note because on the calendar, it's noted as for today, but it's actually going to be next week. So that's important. And we put that out there. Christina Wilson sent out a blast. So Junior Parent Meeting next Tuesday at 7 p.m. I will be there as a principal, but I'll also be there as the parent of a junior as well, taking notes. Again, for the day before Thanksgiving, we had that 1 hour early dismissal. And that also is going to satisfy our emergency evacuation drill that we have to do for the state every year. We have the 2 days for Thanksgiving recess, and then the Frosty Parade is that Sunday. December faculty meeting, you don't need to know about that. But that is the first Wednesday of every month, and we put that out there. The conferences come right off of that. Congratulations to the students participating in our NISMA All-State Conference. And then we have our winter concerts. The alumni breakfast, we would ask for your help to get that message out there. We have contact information that they gave us, but we don't always have, we don't know if they changed their email. You know, Skater Boy 24 was cool when they were in high school and middle school, but when they're now in college going for, internships and jobs, not as cool. So they changed their email addresses and they don't always share that with us. So if you can get the information out there that our alumni breakfast will be at 10 a.m. That morning. Any questions out there? Any concerns? As always, I'll stick around. I appreciate you taking the time to come in and be with us here today and making us a better place. So thank you very much.